this consecutively in the country. She recently led an emotional distress helpline during the second wave of COVID crisis launched by Mukta Foundation. On behalf of the MP College of Arts and Science, I welcome you, Ms. Ashwini, to this webinar. It is indeed a pleasure to have you among us today. Looking forward to an enriched learning experience from you. Over to you, Ms. Ashwini. You may please begin. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jocelyn, for such a warm welcome. And good afternoon to all of you. And I must place on record that, in all our initiatives, the MP College has certainly been a source of immense support to us every time, we've come to Goa. And thank you also to Dr. Mukta ma'am for connecting me with this particular forum. So, as Dr. Jocelyn was mentioning to all of you, today my session is going to focus on child sexual abuse. How do we prevent it? So just give me about a second's time. I wish to share my screen and then we could get started. Now, like Dr. Jocelyn was mentioning to all of you, kindly leave your comments, questions, anything that you wish to share, maybe on the chat mode, and as much as possible through the session I'm going to look at it, but if there are questions that could be addressed at the end of the session, I shall do so. So just give me about a second's time and we could get started. Are you all able to see the screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, great then. So today we are going to focus on prevention of child sexual abuse in order to create a society where we can ensure, child safety. And for us to be able to prevent child sexual abuse, it becomes absolutely essential that we first recognize who are getting abused in the first place. Because imagine if about 100 children are getting abused. Could you let me know approximately, maybe you can put this number on the chat box, approximately how many children are likely to open up and tell maybe an adult, maybe a parent or a teacher that, I am getting abused? Hypothetically, if 100 kids are getting abused, what could be roughly a number? I see that Aparna ma'am is saying 20. Is there anybody who thinks it's going to be all 100 on 100 are going to speak? There's Josefina who's telling about 10, 10 to 15, 5. Okay, so then there is clearly an understanding among all of us. I see the numbers are nowhere reaching above 50. I think 30% seems to be the highest number that we've quoted. In all likelihood, like you're mentioning, if 100 kids are getting abused, sexually abused, it's likely that just a very very small percentage of children are going to open up and tell somebody that, look, somebody's troubling me, somebody's abusing me. So therefore, even when a child is not speaking up, and sharing, but it's possible that the child is showing certain other signs of being abused. So therefore, today a major chunk of time we are going to spend on how do we recognize that a child is abused, possibly abused, because the only way that we can understand is either when the child speaks about it or through the medical test. But there could be certain behavioral signs, there could be certain emotional signs. If we are not aware of recognizing it, then there could be a law, but then we cannot put that to use, right? So therefore, in order to be able to prevent child sexual abuse, let's be aware that we need to first be in a position to recognize that a child is abused. So I'll be speaking about warning signs of child sexual abuse today. Now, the second aspect that I'll touch upon is when we realize that a child is possibly sexually abused, or sexually abused, if there is a confirmation, how do we respond? I want you to know sometimes the primary trauma for a child who's abused is the sexual abuse itself. But sometimes the manner in which people around the child are responding to a child or reacting to the child could lead to secondary trauma. That could be even more damaging at times. So therefore, let's figure out how do we respond. Now, I'm not talking about responding from the mental health professional's point of view, but instead, if you're a teacher, if you're a counselor, what could be your immediate reaction? Also, legally, what could you do? In, briefly, I'm going to explain to all of you. So what's going to be the focus of today's session? Today, we are going to speak about how do we recognize, how do we respond, and ultimately, how do we prevent child sexual abuse so that children can have a safe life in the society that they are part of. Yeah, so let's begin then. Look at this particular slide. I hope all of you are able to see the slide. For some reason, I'm unable to put it on the full screen, but I hope all of you are able to see the screen. So now, this particular slide, we are talking about levels of prevention of child sexual abuse. Whenever we are talking about prevention, we look at it as if, preventing child sexual abuse is just one aspect. Yes, it is. But then there are three levels that we could be preventing child sexual abuse. Look at the first one. There is primary level of prevention, secondary level of prevention, and tertiary level of prevention. Now, I'm going to first talk about tertiary level and then I'm going to move, upwards. What does tertiary level of prevention mean? Tertiary level of preventing child sexual abuse means, unfortunately, child sexual abuse has already occurred. Now we are going to prevent it from further occurring. I'm very sure sometimes you might be aware of certain scenarios where a child has been abused, maybe for 6 years, maybe for 6 months, and nobody realizes. Maybe at the home or at the school, wherever the child is getting abused, but nobody has recognized the child is abused. So abuse has continued for long. Isn't it unfortunate? Even at tertiary level, we have failed. So, what is tertiary level of prevention? Sexual abuse has occurred, nobody is aware of it, or sometimes somebody is aware of it, but then they have not taken an action to stop it from further happening. Because sometimes, I've had a lot of schools ask us, ma'am, conduct program on child sexual abuse. And we'll say, fine. And they will say, so you'll only be speaking about POXO law, no? I'm like, okay, POXO law, we will speak about it. But tell me, when does a law come into the picture? After abuse has already taken place, we can punish the culprit. But is that prevention in its true sense? Prevention is stopping it before it occurs, no? So therefore, in tertiary level of prevention, we could be using law, the legal system in order to prevent abuse from further happening. But let's acknowledge that tertiary level of prevention in its true sense is not prevention because abuse has already happened. Is there clarity, everyone, about tertiary level of prevention? Can I see some yes so that I can move on to the secondary level of prevention? All right. Now, what is secondary level of prevention? Listen to this. If in tertiary level abuse has already happened, we are going to, stop it from further happening. Secondary level of prevention is when we are going to work with those children who are far more vulnerable to becoming victims of sexual abuse. Are you all listening to me? What is secondary level of prevention? Secondary level of prevention is when we know through research that this group of children are far more vulnerable to becoming victims of child sexual abuse. Now, please don't mistake that I'm saying only some group are vulnerable. No, all children could be vulnerable by the very default of the age factor. No, they could be vulnerable, but some children are far more vulnerable than the rest. Can you put it on the chat mode? Who could be these people? Who could be these children who are far more vulnerable? Who could it be? Maybe a child with intellectual disability. Here is a child who's unable to understand. Maybe, training is possible with other children, but in case of those who are severely intellectually disabled, sometimes it's extremely difficult. So therefore, like, there is Ramar who's speaking about, children with special needs, absolutely. Nifa Alfonso is talking about migrant children, quite possible. Sometimes we've all seen, right, children whose parents are working in the construction sites. Just an example, children are outside, there is no adult supervision at all. Sometimes it's possible that these children are a little bit more vulnerable than the rest. That does not mean only where there is poverty, only when parents are working in unorganized sector, children are vulnerable. Not really. It could also be children who are orphans, but it could also be children who have parents, but the parenting style is highly negligent. Now, when I say negligent, I want you to please listen. When I say negligent, anytime in a forum somebody would say, yeah, no, parents will stay at home, obviously the child is all alone, both the parents are working. I'm not saying that, because it's a world where if both parents don't work, sometimes to move life ahead is difficult. And also when we bring in this working parent factor, sometimes women would bear the brunt of this particular dialogue. No, when I mean parents who are negligent, I don't mean both the parents working, not at all. It's about when we come back from work, what's the kind of engagement? A parent could be 24/7 with the child and yet be a neglectful parent. So, negligence is what's the quality of the time, the nature of the quality time that we spend with the child. That can also be a factor that can make a child vulnerable. Why? Because most abusers are observers. Are you all listening? What am I saying? Most abusers, child sexual abusers, observe first. They're going to observe which parent speaks to the child about the daily happenings. If a child goes, imagine they say majority of child sexual abuse happens due to people that the child and the family is aware of. So that means here is an abuser who has enough opportunity to observe parent child behavior. No, some of you are talking about negligent parenting, weak parent child relationship. Absolutely. Yeah. So they'll observe. Imagine a child goes to a mother and says, Mommy, I want to tell you something. And then, the mom says, Don't you understand? I've just come from work. And if the abuser observes this consistently, then the abuser knows that here is a parent who's not listening to the child. And if I take advantage of this, then who will the child go and speak to? So you see, vulnerability can come in various shapes and forms. It need not always be because a child is orphan. It could also be because the parent is extremely autocratic, extremely negligent. So, or some of you are speaking about certain conditions of the child, which is maybe the child cannot see. There is this institution in Bangalore called Shankara Eye Hospital. We've conducted a couple of programs in this particular eye hospital for children who cannot see. There is a disability when it comes to the vision now, or a child who cannot hear. Imagine if I as a trainer is not aware of the sign language, how can children who cannot hear you know even be informed about this particular aspect of child abuse, right? Some of you are talking about how Smita ma'am is talking about how there's no awareness. Sometimes children absolutely have no idea that what's happening to them is abuse. Hmm? Sometimes an abuser may say, you know what, all adults must teach children this particular behavior. Your parents taught you how to bathe, right? Now I'm teaching you something else. And here is a child who's thinking maybe this is something that all adults need to teach children. They don't know any better. So, therefore, when we are talking about vulnerability, I don't want you to look at it only in terms of the stereotypes, because the moment we are talking about vulnerability, we bring in poverty, we bring in orphans. Yes, that is also, but over and above that, vulnerability can come in several forms. Now, when we work with children who are far more vulnerable to becoming victims of child sexual abuse, when we work with them, maybe we come up with a specialized module for children who are having visual impairment, and then train them. Now we are working at secondary level of prevention. I hope there is clarity. Now, what is primary level of prevention? This is important. Primary level of prevention is here, nobody is a victim, no child is vulnerable, or at least we are not aware of in this group who is vulnerable. Instead, when we train anybody and everybody, adults, children, parents, teachers, police officers, doctors, nurses, or a forum such as this can become, an endeavor of primary level of prevention. Yeah, what is primary level of prevention? Primary level of prevention means no child is a victim yet, we are not even aware of the vulnerability of this group of children, but we train everybody. Now, when I was introduced, ma'am was talking to you all about a campaign that I had led in 2019. Even at Dempe College back then, we had conducted, a program wherein we traveled for 90 days non-stop. Back then, there were 29 states. So we traveled to all the 29 states and, three union territories that we could go. And we conducted programs with military officers, doctors. If we are traveling in a railway bogie, we spoke to the people in that particular compartment. Parents, teachers, doctors, psychologists, nurses, journalists, lawyers, we did not leave anybody. Now this would be a classic example of primary level of prevention. Now, what I request to all of you is, given that all of you are interested in child safety and child well-being, and that's the focus of this international the webinar series. So if you're interested in child safety, we need to ensure that we put in our efforts at all these three levels. Sometimes a lot of budget allotment of governments will happen now. To which level? Tertiary level of prevention, because we are focusing on the victims. But imagine if we do not invest time, manpower, economic resources to primary level of prevention, because here nobody is a victim yet. If we do not empower the community, then eventually somebody will trickle down to tertiary level, no? So therefore my request to all of you is, if you are in a position of power, if you are running a school, or if you're a parent, or you could be, in any walk of life, ensure that you put your efforts, to all the levels of prevention, and only then can we create a society that is safer for children to live in. Is everybody okay with this? Are you all clear about the three levels of prevention? Can there be
Yes,
some
ma'am.
indication so that I move on? Wonderful. So let me move on to the next set of the ideas. Now, I've already spoken to you all about how, let's talk about warning signs. Now, I'll talk to you all about the warning signs. And before that, as we have already mentioned earlier, if 100 kids are hypothetically getting abused, our own hunch in this group is, my hunch is 2 to 20. But once again, this is our best hunch, because to conduct research on the possibility factor is difficult, but my hunch is 2 to 20% maybe children will open up. Now those children who do not speak up, that does not mean they're not showing warning signs. So now we are going to spend a lot of time, at least the next half an hour, in learning about possible warning signs of child sexual abuse. Let me begin with one, the story. I won't reveal, a lot of information. Here is somebody who I met as an adult. Yeah, I met this person as an adult. Now, this is something that's commonly seen in many cases also. Now, this adult lady, she's retrospectively recollecting. She's recollecting. She was sexually abused by, somebody who was very closely related to her. You know what the warning sign was? The warning sign was, this kid, did not speak about being abused to anyone. I believe around 8 or 9 years, around that particular time, she was expressing, whatever she was going through, the abuse, by eating soup, which the parents saw. Here is a child who's eating soup. Can anybody guess what could be the reason why a child is eating soap? And here is a child who's sexually abused. What could be the reason that she's eating soap? And it's not a case where she did not have food to eat. Yeah. Aparna Bhatkal is speaking about how it's possible that the child was perceiving herself to be dirty. Thank you so much for that, ma'am. Yes, Vibha is also speaking about maybe because she wanted to feel clean, how weak she feels. Absolutely. Now, for that child, we are imagining, because I met her as an adult, she was able to verbalize it. But probably if she was a child, maybe she couldn't have consciously recognized why she is eating soap also. Here was a child maybe felt she was cleaning her body outside through soap, like we all do. But internally, maybe she felt, dirty. Hmm? And therefore, in order to make an attempt to clean herself internally, she's eating soap. Now, a parent sees a child who is eating soap. Typically, we all know how families, parents treat children, right? What do you think these parents would have done? This lady tells, Ma'am, had they simply asked me, why are you eating soap? In Kannada, yak soap tantidya. That's how. Why are you eating soap? I would have told them that it is because our relative is abusing me and I want to clean myself. But did the parents ask her, why are you eating soap? No. The parents took a stick, hit her, bruised her, and you know how parents speak, right? Don't we give you food? Another time you eat food will throw you out of the home. I'm sure colloquially, how do parents speak? Yeah, in Kannada, it's like ಇನ್ನೊಂದ್ ಸಲ ತಿಂದ್ರೆ ಕಳಿಸ್ಬಿಡ್ತೀನಿ ಮನೆಯಿಂದ ಈಚೆಗೆ. Not that they'll throw her out, but that's the way parents speak. I'll throw you out of the house another time we see you eat soap. Here is a child already traumatized. Yeah, here is a child already traumatized, not having anybody to speak to, showing warning sign. She's just waiting for somebody to ask what happened. She would have spoken about it. But here were parents who saw the warning sign. See, there is a difference, right? They saw, but they didn't recognize. They didn't recognize. They saw the warning sign, but they didn't recognize what was happening. They hit her. And this adult says, as a child, I felt I'll put up with the abuse, but I'm not going to tell you what I'm going through because you don't seem to have a heart to even recognize the pain I am in. So the child has promised that, yes, I won't eat soap, but she's also promised that, yes, I'm not going to tell you guys what I'm going through. And it seems abuse continued. Penetrative sexual activity has continued for several years till that relative went out of country for studies or something. She's talking about this as an adult painfully. Now you see, warning signs are there, but when we see it but we don't recognize it, some of us won't even see it because we don't know. Yeah, but seeing it and not recognizing it, just imagine the kind of damage it does to children. Smita ma'am is saying very important that people around are alert, observe, talk friendly, so that we understand why is a child showing a behavior that doesn't quite seem normal. Are you all okay with this? So now I wish to talk to you all about around 15 warning sign. Please remember, these are possible warning sign. See, why I'm saying possible warning sign is, I understand, those of you who are parents here, when we're talking about all these warning signs, right? God forbid, there should never be a problem. But then when we are aware of all these warning signs, I don't want you to become paranoid. We look at a child or we look at any adult, it's like potential abuser there. I don't want you to get worked up. Instead, towards the end of the session, I'm also going to talk about how do we equip our children. And they're smart. When we talk to them, when we empower them, they would be a lot more empowered than we could possibly imagine. So when I'm talking about all these warning signs or this topic itself, I don't want you to become upset. I don't want you to I know how brain works. Yeah, so take a break if need be, if it's it's getting, way too much with all these examples. Would that be okay? But if you feel anger, which we should feel about the abusers and the condition of children in our society, or if we are pained, do not suppress these emotions. Instead, channelize it so that we can together do something about it. Are you all okay? Do not suppress unpleasant emotions that I'm sure sometimes these dialogues would rake up. But instead of denying it, instead of suppressing these unpleasant emotions, let's channelize so that we can come up with programs in the schools where you work, in the community where you reside. Let's empower children and also their families, because sometimes children know they are abused, and the child will tell a mom or a dad, "Mummy, this is what is happening," and the mother or father would say, "Keep quiet. Intuition abuse is happening, will change another place, you go some other place." Now that is no intervention, right? Now a child is going to feel let down, so therefore let's empower not just children, importantly the adults in the life of children. All right then, so I'll continue. Hmm? So always remember possible warning sign, because these signs could be because of anything, and only when you talk to a child in a gentle, neutral manner is the child likely to open up and let you know what has truly happened. All right. So now look at the first warning sign. The first warning sign is, here is a child who perceives himself or herself, as the body being, the dirty. I've already given you one example of a child eating soap. The other manifestations of a child feeling the body to be dirty because of child sexual abuse could be spending a lot of time in washroom. Yeah, maybe the frequency increases, or at times the duration increases. Imagine 2 hours the child is bathing and bathing and bathing and not feeling satisfied. Now these are things that parents can observe, right? Or if a child is in a hostel, these are behaviors that we can observe. That can be a warning sign. Now the second warning sign can also be that the child who was very comfortable to speak, and was very happy to be mingling with people around, may suddenly choose to shut up. There could be a blackmail from the the abuser, right? There could be a blackmail from the abuser, fear of being judged. Wonderful. Scared to blurt things out. Absolutely. Sometimes you see a child may first think traumatized. Beautiful. Beautiful responses. Traumatized, not sure how to say. Absolutely. Fear of the consequences. Yeah, what lovely points, all of you are giving. Good. See, imagine when a child is sexually abused, right? When a child is sexually abused, there could be a blackmail. There could be a blackmail from the abuser that if you talk about it, I'll hurt you, or I'll hurt your loved ones. Now, initially, the child may be like, okay, let me not talk about abuse. Let me not talk about abuse only, but the rest of the things, let me talk. But then eventually the child may realize, when mummy is speaking so gently, what if when I'm talking about what is happening in my school, what if I blurt things out? As adults, we've all had experience. No, sometimes we don't have a plan to tell our best friend about something, but when our best friend is listening to us very, very well, at times we will tell the friend a lot more than what we had originally planned, and then we are like, how did I tell her or him this particular secret? As adults, we have experienced this. Very similarly, a child also, Sonal is speaking about Freudian slip. Absolutely. Sometimes we tell it because that's there. That's my unconsciously, I'm suppressing, I'm suffering from the weight of the truth that I'm suppressing, but sometimes I just blurt it out. So, because of this possible fear, a child may say, let me not utter a word. In that way, I will not utter anything, including this abuse. So this is something that can be observed. So therefore, this can certainly be one of the possible warning signs. The other warning signs can also be frequent nightmares or unable to sleep. Now, the The lack of sleep at times could actually be because of the actual physical pain of abuse. You can imagine, right, the kind of trauma, the bodily trauma the child might have gone through. That here is a child who's unable to sleep because of you know the bodily pain. The other reason could be a fear that the moment I fall asleep, what if the abuser comes and troubles me? you know because this is likely to happen, especially when the abuser is very well living in the place where the child is also there, right? The child sleeps, and then you know somebody comes and troubles the kid. I'll give you an example. I was in one of the districts in northern Karnataka, and here was a lady, who's I believe she was associated with the school, and she told me this particular scenario. I want you to imagine. The example that she gave is, it seems she's aware of a child who was constantly sleeping in the class. Yeah, constantly sleeping in the class. Now, usually when we see a child sleeping in the class, what are our immediate assumptions? Put it in the chat mode. What are our immediate assumptions when we see a child sleeping in the class consistently? What do we think? If at all you're a teacher, or generally, what is the assumption? Lazy, not interested in studies, maybe was watching IPL late night, and then look, you know you're sleeping now, isn't it? Assumptions. Maybe 9 out of 10 children, maybe there are other reasons. But could it be possible that that one child, like many of you are telling in the chat mode, could it be possible that one child is afraid to sleep at home because the moment the child sleeps, there is a fear that somebody would abuse them? So the child is wide awake, and then knows that in the school is not the right place to sleep, yet the child feels safe enough to sleep in the classroom, despite the teacher yelling, scolding, sometimes we know in our country, hitting, you know so therefore, let's not assume. So look at this particular example. Here is a child who was sleeping in the class. You know, because the teacher did not assume it's because of laziness or playing at home or watching television. Here was a teacher who simply asked, "What's happening? You seem to be sleeping," and the child opens up. This was an example that I've heard from one of the participants of my, the workshop. So, if you're a parent, if you're a teacher, when we have opportunity to see that the child's sleep is getting disturbed, there could be n number of reasons, but this can also be one of the possible reasons. Hmm? So, therefore, can we please be observant? Can we please be observant? Because, as I said, abusers are highly observant. Now, for us to be able to understand, look, unfortunately, the consequences of such abusive behavior, we need to be observant. Otherwise, there's no way we will recognize. They do a pictorial the depiction of what's has happened to them, and so many of my colleagues have seen such cases. Yeah, so many of my students have. It's quite possible that a child may write something, a child may draw something, and through that maybe we will get certain indications of potential child sexual abuse. But the only way we can understand is when we talk to a child. Yeah. The other warning sign can also be the other sign can also be that the child can become extremely unsociable, or the child can become extremely withdrawn, or can get very, very clingy. What could be the reason that the child now wants to withdraw from everyone? I want you to please know that most abusers first will build trust with the child, then trick the child, then abuse the child, and then force the child to maintain secrecy. Did you all hear me? I'm going to repeat this once again. Most abusers, all right, most abusers will first try and build trust with the child, first step. I'm simplifying it. Those of you who are really interested in learning about this phenomena called grooming, most abusers will groom children. Grooming means what? the process of building trust with the child, tricking the child, abusing the child, and then maintaining secrecy with the child. This process is called grooming. I would strongly recommend you read up on the work of Michael Wellner. Are you all listening to me? I believe he's a forensic psychiatrist. Yeah, Michael Wellner has done tremendous work in the field of grooming. If we don't talk to children about grooming, if you're simply talking to children about good touch, bad touch, what prevention could we be doing in the world that we live? Hmm? So, Michael Wellner. So, what I'm trying to say here is most children have first trusted the abuser and then got tricked and then got abused and they are suffering. Now, for a child, it could be like, because I trusted somebody only, no, I'm now in this problem. Let me not trust anybody. Let me not interact with anybody. So a child may just want to be left all alone. A child who was very well mingling now does not want to, meet with anybody, including the relatives, including cousins. This could be a warning sign, right? The opposite of withdrawal the opposite of withdrawal is clinginess. What is clinginess? Now, earlier when mom was going to work, the child was okay. But now the child is like, Mommy, don't go to work. Mommy, please come back at 7 o'clock. See, the child is not telling mom, I'm getting abused at 7 o'clock if you don't reach on time. But the child is like, Mommy, please come back at 7 o'clock. No, Mommy, please, 7 o'clock, right? Promise, will you come at 7 o'clock? Look at this. But how do most parents react? Don't you understand I have worked till 8 o'clock? You're old enough and you're troubling me. Now warning sign is there, but we lost it. We need to speak to children. Yeah. So it could be extreme withdrawal behavior or it can also be clinginess. Even that could be a sign of child is not showing any visible emotion. We've all experienced this, right? Sometimes we cry because we are pain, and we reach a point wherein we are like, no point in expressing emotions. That's it. So we go numb. Can happen. Emotional detachment can happen. Dressing, very good. A child may now want to cover head to toe. It's burning, hot outside, but the child is like, let me wear a sweater. Because maybe here is a child who thinks that because if there is skin getting revealed, maybe an abuser gets angry. It's also a society like that. No victim shame, will not bother anything about the abuser. Immediately, it's like, what was the victim wearing? And this is not just for adults. This is not just with adult rape survivors. Even with children, this question gets asked. What is a child wearing? Was a child wearing modern clothes? See, how unfortunate. So a child being conditioned and socialized in such an environment may now want to cover, Now the chat mode is flooded with a lot of messages. Wonderful. As much as possible, let me go through and then I'll connect it to what I have to share. So these are all warning signs, right? Wonderful. Now, okay, feeling trauma, scared of blood. Okay, just give me a second. Okay. Where? Okay, crying more. The child might be crying more, emotional detachment, dressing, avoiding one particular individual. Kindly make note of this particular point. See, a child who is abused at times could be avoiding the abuser. Quite possible, right? The child could be avoiding the abuser. But sometimes what can happen? The child might be avoiding everybody who looks like that. So let's say here is an abuser wearing goggles. Now the child is afraid of anybody and everybody wearing goggles. This is visual resemblance, right? Or sometimes, let's say the abuser uses a particular word. Maybe the abuser uses some word or maybe a tone. Somebody else who's not the abuser, but the child is now afraid of anybody who has a similar tone of voice or is using similar words, auditory resemblance. Or sometimes, quite possible that here is a child whose abuser was using a particular fragrance of the scent, perfume. Now, the moment the child, whiffs similar scent, now the child is now anxious. See? So, therefore, an excellent point. A child who is sexually abused does not, may not, let's not generalize, may not just avoid the abuser, may avoid and may develop intense fear towards anybody and everybody who has some resemblance with the abuser. These are all observable things, right? Hmm? Sometimes what can also happen is a child may also become extremely afraid of going to a place where the abuse has happened. The child may refuse to go to a kitchen, maybe because the abuse took place in the kitchen. It's their own home. The child refuses to go to one area of the home. Or a child who was going to a school earlier very, very comfortably now is weeping. And then, somebody said, I think Aparna Bhatkal ma'am was talking about, crying. The moment you say school, the child is crying. Maybe because abuse is happening there, no? All of this could be potential warning signs. Now, when I say potential warning signs, it could also be a false alarm, but it could be an alarm of some distress, right? Even if not child sexual abuse, because here is a forum where we are looking at holistic child safety and development. So, it need not be only about child sexual abuse, even though that's my focus. Any warning sign, let's take it seriously. Hmm? Now, Shreya ma'am is talking about easily getting startled. This is classic symptom of trauma. We might have experienced this also. There is PTSD, right? Post traumatic stress disorder. One of the symptoms of that is, even when a pen drops somewhere, the child is now startled because that's a traumatic response. That can also be for child sexual abuse. Now, the most common visible warning signs is decreased academic performance, lack of interest, because if not anything that parents observe in India, you know, most parents will observe academic behavior, no? Isn't it? Even if we are impervious to any other warning sign, mostly the society wants to know how's the child studying. Now, a sudden drop or a gradual drop in the academic performance or the academic interest, the motivation is also something that we need to explore. Hmm? That can also be a warning sign. This is almost like as participatory as a webinar could get. Very good. There are other points. Kirti is talking about victim. Listen to this point. Hmm? Victim tries to abuse others to take revenge. Are you all listening to me? This is an excellent point. It's quite possible that a child who has been abused may abuse other children, sometimes maybe to take revenge, or sometimes it could simply be like, I have gone through this experience. If that is okay, why not another child going through it? See, now, there was a couple of years ago, I think a 5-year-old child, sorry for describing certain, cases. It was all over in the newspaper. I think it was in one of the schools in Delhi. A young boy, 5 or 4 years old, don't know what ran in the mind of the child, took a pencil, inserted in the vagina of another young child. Now, one way to look at it is, how can a 5-year-old be as violent and abusive towards another kid? But isn't it equally important for us to explore what could be the potential reasons that this child, a 5-year-old, is aware of the genitalia of, a girl's body? Was this child himself abused? I don't know, but this is something that we need to explore. So, therefore, sometimes when we see abusive behavior on the part of a child only, abusive behavior. See, I'm not talking about general curiosity in a child. I'm sure as children, sometimes when children are playing, they'll lift the clothes, they'll see each other's genitalia. This is sexual exploration that at times happens in childhood, not with just their own body, but even with their peers. But now these are children, when we say don't do it, infections, you should not be doing it, they stop. There's no excessive guilt attached. But then there could be some children who are doing it consistently despite telling not to do. Then an abusive behavior of a child in itself could be a warning sign of this child being abused already. So that can also be a warning sign. Yeah, thanks for all these inputs from the participants. Now, excessive, unexplained fear, phobia, like we have established, phobia towards the abuser or phobia towards others who resemble abuser. And I told you three factors: visual resemblance, auditory resemblance, smell. No, it's called olfactory resemblance. Anything is possible. The other idea, I'm building it from all of your points, and then I'll go to my other points if at all you've missed anything. And by the looks of it, it's like you're covering all of it. Now, one of the other aspects could be self-harm. Now, self-harm is most common in children who are above 11 and 12. I could be wrong, but from my observation and what research studies that I have seen, intentionally harming oneself because they have been victims of child sexual abuse is very common, maybe in adolescence or pre-adolescence. But among children, very very young, like 4-year-old, 5-year-old, when they are abused, right, they're angry. Sometimes they may simply bite themselves, oh, like that. Very young kids can bite themselves, which is typically not considered self harm. Because when we think about self harm, we look at cuts and other possible the injuries that can also happen. So these are all warning signs which we better be aware of. Some of you are talking about avoiding all men and women. Like I have said, if a woman has abused, now a child needs to stop interacting with all women or all men. Sometimes pediatricians have been abusers. Then why would a child want to wish to go to a doctor? No, conditioning. All of this can be signs of abuse. Or some of you, Maria ma'am is saying, showing the same abusive behavior while playing, quite possible. Self harm, great. All of you have given me several the points. Let me continue to share few more warning signs, maybe for another 5 to 10 minutes, and then we will move on to other topics. Now, the reason why, the reason why I'm spending quite a lot of time on warning signs is simply because these are children who are already abused. If we do not stop abuse by recognizing these warning signs, that means even at the tertiary level, we have failed to prevent. So we need to be aware of warning signs. Are you all okay talking at length about these warning signs? Are you all getting bored? As in, how many warning signs? I hope. Yeah. It's one thing to know, the other thing to and remember, and then observe and act upon our recognition. All right. Now, I think some of you have not muted. May I request you to please mute? Stephanie Fernandez, a lot of noise is coming from your. Okay, all right. Great. Let's move on. Yeah, let's move on. Now, few other warning signs. Okay, maybe we've already spoken about several, but let me take. Yeah, are you all able to see the screen? The new screen? All right. Look at this particular point. Here, another warning sign could be overreacting or overacting when somebody, asks, are you abused? I'll give you an example. This happened, I think, 2012 or 13, several years ago, when I was practicing at a college environment. Here was a child, they quit. So I don't know what happened to the case, but a couple of sessions that I saw the kid, there were some indication that maybe the child was sexually abused. Now here is a child, speaks perfect English. The grammar wise, the vocabulary wise, everything is phenomenal. Now, after several sessions, I'm asking the child, I have built rapport with the child. I'm asking the child, has anyone touched you? In I'm asking her, has someone touched you in the pelvic region, your chest? I'm asking her, has someone touched you? This kid who speaks perfect English is asking me, like this, uh, Auntie, what does touch mean? Can you believe? Here is a kid, good vocabulary, great grammar, English, has spoken to me in English, 8-year-old or something. And now, when I'm asking a child, has anyone touched you? This area, and I'm showing the part of the body. The child asks me, what does touch mean? Here is a kid who's overacting. Here is a child who's acting because she does not want to answer. She just wants to make it seem like I don't even know what touch is. How can you ask me this question? Isn't it a warning sign? It better be a warning sign, and then need to further explore. Or some children may also overreact. This was not overreaction. This was overacting, subtle acting. What is touch? Other kids may overreact. The moment, I see some of your names, let's say Stephanie is a child, and I ask, Stephanie, has someone touched you inappropriately? Now Stephanie runs away, saying, I don't know what you're saying, I want to go and play. You see, a child is now overreacting. These are all warning signs. A child who's not abused will say, Mama, why are you asking me? Someone touched? Nobody has touched. Neutral. But a child who is abused may at times overreact or overact. All right? That can be a warning sign. The other warning sign can also be change in the eating habits. Change in the eating habits. See, I mean, it breaks my heart to sometimes even vocalize these examples. Sometimes a child may not be eating because the abuser says eat and be strong, and here is a child wants to intentionally become weak, so is not eating. Or a child may be going through depressive episodes, right, or depression, because of what the child situationally is going through. So, and we all know, when we are feeling low, do we feel like eating? We don't feel like eating. The other reason why we could see change in eating habits is, see, all of us are adults in this particular forum. We need to talk about examples as it is. Sometimes what would happen is, there could be a certain edible thing which resembles genitalia, or which reminds the child something about that sexually abusive process the child has been through. Something like that, of maybe a banana. Maybe a child looks at it and feels pukish because the child now remembers, the male genitalia. So sometimes all these reasons might make a child, display changes in eating habits. Or at times, the abuser might have taken the child through, an orally abusive experience. The esophagus could be damaged, or there could be pain, and the child is unable to swallow. All of these could be the various reasons why somebody can see changes in the eating habits of a child. The other ideas could be outbursts of anger towards others or oneself. Now, all of us, many of us maybe are coming from the domain of psychology. What is this defense mechanism called? When you're angry on someone, here is a child, who will the child be angry on? Abuser, no? But can a 5-year-old, 6-year-old do anything to the abuser who is 30, 60-year-old? What can a child do? There is a power hierarchy, right? Now the child may take this anger out on somebody else. Who could these people be? Put it on the chat mode, please. The child is angry on the abuser, but the child knows I can't do anything towards the abuser. So who can the child take this anger out? Who can the child take the anger out? Maybe parents, maybe simply pinching the, the friend in the school, or is hitting the sibling. What is this phenomena called? The anger that I have is on someone, but then I am you know oh, all of you are speaking. Okay, I'm sorry, I had not seen all of this. Maybe I have missed out on certain the comments. Now, displacement, absolutely, this is called displacement, right? It's a defense mechanism. Now, many of you have given such excellent examples of where the anger, you know whoever the child thinks is weaker than the child himself or herself. Hmm? Now, it can happen. Sometimes the child may show anger on their favorite toy, taking the toy and hitting. You see? Because they need to take out. Because imagine, a parent is not weaker. With that lenience, maybe a child may hit the parent, but the parent will, he or she, keep quiet. Will siblings keep quiet? If this child is behaving like this, they'll also give back. Then a child may figure out other targets, tearing their book and throwing, or throwing their favorite toy, or harming the pets. Quite possible. Isn't all these warning signs? All these are warning signs, and we better be aware of this. We really need to be aware of all this. And at times, what can happen is, the anger that the child has on the abuser can also get shifted to oneself. What is this defense mechanism called? What I intend to do to others, when I cannot do it to them or to anybody else, I do it to my own self. In this case, a child may feel, I want to get rid of this abuser, I want to harm this abuser. Can't harm. Instead, harm. Yeah, self harm, self victimization. These are phenomena, but what is the underlying defense mechanism? Go beyond Freud. It starts with R and ends with N. Very good. Brian, retroflexion. Excellent. Retroflexion is a gestalt defense mechanism, right? What you intend to do to others, when you can't do it, you do it to your own self. My doctoral work is on women who burn themselves, not children, women who burn themselves. Several women say, I didn't want to die. I wanted to kill my husband by burning, because that's the kind of torture he's put me through. But my children are dependent on the money he brings. So what did I do? I burnt my own self. Excellent, Brian. Like Brian said, this is retroflexion defense mechanism. Hmm? So let us be observant of behaviors. All right. Then we have unexplained bruises. What could be some of the bruises that we see on the body of a child who was sexually abused? Can you put it on the chat mode, please? Did you all listen? What am I saying? What could be the nature of the bruises that we see on the body of a child who is sexually abused? Cuts, the beating marks, bite marks, correct? Anything else? Hickeys, fine. Here, commonly seen. Cigarette burnt marks, excellent. Bruises. It's like as if pinch marks, scratches. Now, sometimes my worry is that parents take bite marks seriously. Parents take bite marks seriously because it's unusual. It's not a small mark. That means it's not like a child who's bit this child. Instead, it's an adult. Then they take it seriously. When there is a scratch, what happens? When there is a scratch, a parent might think, array, friends. Or when there is a pinch mark, sometimes they may even think mosquito bite. Yeah. So all of these reasons, sometimes there is negligence. So irrespective of what is the nature, imagine there is a pinch mark, parents mistake it as mosquito bite. How is it that the mosquito don't bite other children or other adults in the home, only the child, is it? So please, whenever you're conducting training programs, And I would strongly request, go out to the community and then start speaking about these warning signs. And sometimes I've even been asked, what if in the community there are abusers? They will learn about warning signs. Now you see, abusers were not trained by anybody. It's a sick mind which has caught on to these behaviors. Now when abusers in the community knows that training programs on warning signs are happening, they are likely to back out, because now the abuser knows that he or she is living in an empowered community. So please go out to the community and start conducting programs. It's absolutely essential. All right. Now, the other warning sign can also be a child giving a hint. How can a child give a hint about sexual abuse? Sometimes a child may say, I want to tell you something. Please listen to me. No, and we may think some story, but let's listen, because sometimes children are giving hints. I have a story that you would have never heard. Then they may talk about their own experience of child abuse. Can we please be careful? Are you all okay with this? Any other warning sign that you think I have left? Anything else? I believe I have, explained most of it. In fact, I believe I've explained all of it. Any other? Any other? Okay, maybe I can think of, one, wherein this is called regressive behavior. We all know progressive behavior is as per the age the child behaves. One warning sign can also be a child showing regressive behavior. Can you give me examples of regressive behavior that children could, show? Let me ask you this question. At approximately at which age a child may stop bedwetting? Good, Aparna ma'am. At which age? Approximately around which age children stop bedwetting? 6, 5, sometimes boys can go up to 7 years. Now imagine a child who had stopped bedwetting at the age of 5. Now suddenly is showing bedwetting at the age of 12. Is that not a warning sign? Are you all listening to me? Yeah. So regressive behavior of a children. Regressive behavior means here is a child who belongs to a particular age, 12, 13. But then the child is displaying a behavior which is of a lower age. That can also be a warning sign. Can you give me any other example of regressive behavior? One example I have given you is bedwetting. Any other example? Thumb sucking. Good, can happen. A child who had stopped thumb sucking, suddenly out of fear. Say, children, my understanding is they suck their thumb in order to feel that safety, no, from within. Now, a child who had stopped, suddenly at the age of 8 years, suddenly the child is starting. What else? What else could be regressive behavior? Wanting to sleep only with parents now. Mummy, you need to sleep with me, otherwise I will cry. You know, uh, that's interesting. Sonal is talking about eyes blinking constantly like a doll. You never know. Stammering behavior, not allowing parents to touch certain, the parts of the body. Now, Sonal, when you're talking about eyes blinking constantly, is there something that you want to elaborate on it? If you could unmute and then let me know, so that I know that I have understood you correctly. Is there something you wish to tell Sonal about why this point of eyes blinking constantly?
Because, ma'am, I have seen in movies, like when such a thing happens, they fail to maintain eye contact with others.
Okay, okay,
They are under fear. You have got me
wonderful.
right.
Yes. So like Sonal is saying, sometimes we know, no, pretending eyes like this, something like that, wanting to cover up something, and then a child is trying to cover up by sometimes overacting. Quite possible. Hmm? So sometimes a child may feel even so vulnerable that suddenly that independent functioning may come down. Mama, will you brush? Mummy, will you, feed me? Just wanting that nurturance because somebody is abusing him or her. Or very interestingly, I think Azizi is talking about Zarguna Azizi is talking about asking parents to help with all the work. No, that was not the point. Not allowing the parents to touch the body. Imagine a child who is now having, burnt marks on the body, maybe the cigarette, the burnt marks. Now, maybe wants to hide it from the parents. No, so therefore not saying this is not regressive behavior. Suddenly a 5-year-old is telling, no mama, no daddy, I want to take bath myself. This is like behaving as if suddenly the child has aged. So all of this can certainly be warning signs. May we all be careful. Are you all okay? I hope, and see, when I'm going through several of your names, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. If not, please forgive. Yeah. Now, I hope I have taken into consideration all the points, but if I missed, it's simply an oversight. Yeah. Now, have talked to you about levels of prevention. Have talked to you extensively on the possible warning sign. Please know these are possible warning signs. The only way to figure it out is by talking to a child in a gentle manner. Are you all okay? Now, few quick points I would like to make, and then I'll go to newer, the slides. Now, I've also talked to you about grooming. Do you all remember grooming? Grooming is the process by which most abusers will build trust with the child, trick the child, abuse the child, and then maintain secrecy. I also want you to remember the word grooming. All right. Now, let's talk about the most basic thing, types of child sexual abuse. Now, in our country, every time a program is conducted with children, what do we teach children? Put it on the chat mode, please. Every time we've talked to children about child sexual abuse, what's that one topic we teach them? And mostly it's just that much. Aparna is saying touch, good touch, bad touch. Now safe touch, unsafe touch. Don't talk to strangers. Assertiveness, good. If you're talking about assertiveness, great. But mostly, in most programs, what I have noticed is good touch and bad touch. Or these days, we are using safe touch and unsafe touch. Great. This is something we need to talk. But then, we don't go beyond that. I'll give you an example. I think this must have been in, I think, Dimapur. I forget. Dimapur, which is there in Nagaland, right? In Dimapur, Dimapur or Punjab, I'm getting confused because those programs happen back to back. In one of the schools there, yeah, I'm asking children, listen to me, I'm asking children, uh, because the principal had said a prevention of child sexual program had already happened, and we insisted we also do a bit. They left us. Now, listen to this. I'm asking children, if somebody looks at you when you're bathing through a window, is that child sexual abuse? Unanimously, okay? The children are saying, no, ma'am, it's not child sexual abuse. What's my question? If somebody looks at you, peeps through a window or a keyhole when you're changing your clothes or when you're bathing, it's not your caretaker, who often may come to help you with bathing. Somebody else. Is that child sexual abuse? Children unanimously, not one or two. The whole group is saying, no, ma'am, it's not child sexual abuse. And I'm asking why. And children say, look, listen to this. Children are saying that person simply saw, no? Simply saw. That means what? Here are a group of children who've been fed to believe that it is child sexual abuse only if there is touch. But do you all believe this is child sexual abuse if a child is seen peeped through a window or a keyhole when the child is bathing? Or yeah, it is, right? Both psychologically it is damaging to a child, and legally also it is child sexual abuse. It's an absolute yes, this is child sexual abuse. And yet in our country, where children have gone through training in child sexual abuse with only an emphasis on good touch and bad touch, end up believing that only when there is touch, it is child sexual abuse, and only when there is touch in the private parts will they even think of reporting. Whether they'll report or not is another thing. At least they'll think of reporting. Isn't it unfortunate? Are you all listening to me? Can you therefore give me, yeah, examples of child sexual abuse that does not involve touch? That also we need to be talking to children. Can you give me examples of child sexual abuse that does not involve touch? Correct. Pornography, making a child watch porn. Sometimes here could be, an abuser. What is that word that I said? Grooming. They're building trust. They're tricking the child by making the child watch porn, maybe child porn, and they're telling that, look, all adults behave like this with a child. With our logic of good touch and bad touch, a child may understand that that person is simply making me watch, simply showing their genitalia to me. So therefore, everyone here, please know that child sexual abuse can be categorized into, listen to this, and also please see on the screen. Child sexual abuse can be categorized into contact sexual abuse and non-contact forms of sexual abuse. This is coming from an organization called stopitnow.com. Are you all okay with this? Yeah? Contact form, non-contact form. Contact form, unfortunately, ranges from molestation to, rape, penetrative sexual activity. But non-contact forms of sexual abuse is equally important. Like all of you are saying, voyeurism. What is voyeurism? Looking at a child when the child is bathing, or encouraging a child to be voyeuristic. Saying a child, see your parents engaging in sexual activity, has happened in the history of, several cases. Voyeurism, no touch, but it is child sexual abuse. Some of you are saying exhibitionism. What is exhibitionism? Exhibitionism is exposing the genitals to the child and asking a child to watch, or telling a child, I'm going to masturbate, you sit and watch. The child has no idea what's happening. There is no touch. Now, if in our trainings we only emphasize on good touch and bad touch, we, in all likelihood, some children may think and understand, reflect and understand. But like the example that I gave of these children in that school, some children may end up believing, if my teacher has said good touch and bad touch only is abuse, then what you're telling is not abuse. Because they believe it's not abuse, they won't talk about it. So therefore, it's very important that we talk to children, not just about contact-based abuse, but also non-contact forms of abuse. There are also, listen to this, verbal forms of child sexual abuse. What does verbal forms of child sexual abuse means? Talking to a child in a sexually explicit manner. Talking to a child, describing the body parts of a child in a vulgar manner. Or telling a child, I'll do this to you, I'll touch you there, I'll do like this. Not doing it, but then speaking about it. Isn't that child sexual abuse? I'm no legal expert, but with the little legal understanding that I have, the POCSO law also considers this. And I hope all of you are aware of the POCSO Act, right? Yeah, Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act got passed in the year 2012 in our country. What is POCSO Act? That's the law that's there to protect children. So POCSO stands for Protection of Children Against Sexual Offences Act. My understanding is even this act better be considering non-contact forms of abuse as sexual abuse, and it does. If that's the case legally, and it could be psychologically damaging, physically damaging to the well being of the child, it better be considered as child sexual abuse by parents and teachers and mental health professionals and legal agents who are working for the safety of children. Why? Because I've heard parents say, ma'am, this relative only made the child watch porno. Should we file a case? You see? Only. Like those children said, simply watch. No. Only made the child watch porn. Should we lodge a case? What do you do to such people? So please inform them that legally also it is child sexual abuse. Are you all okay with this? So I hope stalking, whatever is considered eve teasing. Eve teasing is abuse and violence, right? Look, the casual usage of the term in our society, eve teasing, abusive, it's violent, psychologically very, very violent. Yeah. So therefore, child sexual abuse could be broadly classified into contact forms of sexual abuse and non-contact forms of sexual abuse. Are you all okay with this? Everyone? Drop a yes so that I can move on. Wonderful. Fine. Thank you so much for being participative. And let's remain the same, throughout. Now, I will talk to you about two more topics, maybe three more topics, and then maybe we'll take questions more specific. Now, let us spend some time in busting myths about child sexual abuse. Myths about child sexual abuse. The reason why I'm talking about myths is sometimes when you go meet children, no, it could be a 5-year-old, it could be a 6-year-old. Already there are myths about child sexual abuse in a child who's 6, 7 years old because they're socialized in this particular world where plenty of myths exist about child sexual abuse. I'll give one example and then maybe we'll move on to what you have to say about myths. I went to a school where I studied, this school called Carmel Convent in, Bangalore. Now, this is several years ago when I got trained, and then I, went to conduct child sexual abuse prevention programs. So I told these nuns, it was, nuns were running, the school. I told the sister, let's have both boys and girls together for the program on prevention of child sexual abuse. But for some reason, sisters were not okay with it. And I thought if I push them a little too much, they will, maybe cancel the program. So instead of that, I said, fine. Yeah. So I conducted workshops separately for boys and girls. Now, I think the first session was of boys. These are first standard, second standard kids, all boys. You know how boy in children come, right? Hands at the back, and they came in a straight line and they're sitting. One boy, I will never forget this boy. One boy seems like the leader of the group, or I don't know, because he seemed to have a lot of influence on the group. They all came, okay? And this boy started off. Akka in Kannada, I come from Bangalore. I reside at Bangalore. So I speak Kannada. And one boy, he said, Akka, maybe sister might have told that, I studied in that school. So even though I look older than them, he chose to say Akka. And I'm like, he's so young. Akka. And I'm like, yeah, tell me or something. And then he says, Akka, why ka for us this program? And I'm like, did sisters tell you what this program is about? And he's like, yeah, kid. Yeah. Why for us? And I'm like, what do you mean, why for you? Don't you want to be safe? Don't you want to be safe? That's why this program is for you. Now he's like, no, why for boys this particular program? And I'm asking him, what do you mean by why boys this particular program? He's telling, girls are there. Go teach them that. How old is this boy? 6, maximum 7. Already a myth in his brain, myth in his mind that boys cannot get abused. And that I'm wasting my time by speaking about this topic of safety to boys. So you see the topmost myth, not just among parents of boys' children. Children, boy 6-year-old believes that he is invulnerable. Abusers are boys, according to him, but victims cannot be boys, all of 6 years. So, isn't that myth number one? That boys don't get abused. There are certain statistical reports which says that boys get abused just as much as girls, and in certain cases boys get abused even more than girls. Just that in our society we don't even consider it to be a problem because it's a boy, you see. It's not even abuse, it's an experience. Some parents talk like this, boys themselves talk like this. So it's unfortunate. That's myth number one. The other myth that is abound in our society is that women don't abuse. I have seen several cases where women have been abusers. Yeah. So like many of you are saying, boys get abused perhaps even more than girls according to some studies. Yeah. And women can be abusers. Yeah, are abusers. And any relationship we have seen. Yeah, I mean sometimes it even hurts. I have seen a case where a grandmother was an abuser, sexual abuser. So you see, I mean, it's unfortunate, but these myths that children carry will make them vulnerable in certain circumstances. Yeah. What other myths are you aware of that is prevalent in our society regarding myths about child sexual abuse? The other myth is it is child sexual abuse only when there is touch. I've already spoken to you. It cannot be, child sexual abuse can certainly happen even without touch. That is another myth. What else are the myths? What else? For this group who's been very, very participative throughout, when you don't answer, I don't believe you don't know. What are some other myths about child sexual abuse? The other myth that I often see among children, when I'm conducting programs with children, I have pictures of convicted child sexual offenders. Yeah. I mean, like in newspapers, you see you've collected it. Sometimes, children, when they see certain picture, maybe here is an elite, looking person, they are like, this can't be abuser. This can't be abuser. Why? That person does not look like he's an abuser. You know, I still hear, children when we simply ask to check what's running in their mind. How do abusers look? Children say they'll have mole here, they'll have red eyes, they will be tall, they'll be wearing masks. These are children who have myths because abusers can look like you and me. Only those children who will say, no, ma'am, abusers can look like anything, they are the ones who don't have myths. The moment a child opens the mouth and says, this is how abusers look, that's a myth. So that is a myth. Yeah. Now, the other myths, some other myths that you are saying is, not just rich, poor, middle class, all classes. Absolutely. Abusers can come from all classes, victim can come from all socioeconomic classes. And it's a world where history reveals that doctors have been abusers, psychologists have been abusers, people in the religious life have been abusers, police officers have been abusers, you name it, people within quotes in respectable positions have been abusers. Parents have been abusers. What more painful can it be? So anybody can be a potential abuser. Yeah. Now the other, if the child is sexually abused, then there will be a medical evidence is a myth, isn't it? Are you all okay with this? I mean, look at it. No, sometimes when a child has reported after several weeks or after several months, sometimes medical evidence, see, I'm not a medical professional, but my understanding is sometimes it's difficult to get a medical evidence. No, a forensic report may not reveal that abuse has happened, but that does not mean abuse has not happened. So all these are myths to believe that the medical evidence will always be there. How will there be a medical evidence when the person has made the child watch porn? Yeah. So we need to really be be thinking about evidences in a much more broader sense. Yeah. And the other myth is that all abusers are strangers. It's the myth of all myths, a block lettered myth. No, most abusers are insiders. Most abusers are known to the child. So to believe that stranger, danger, I've seen in some schools, children going, stranger, danger, stranger, danger. No. Yes, strangers could be dangerous, but that does not mean insiders cannot be troublemakers. Yeah. I see than child without disability. Nothing. In fact, children with disability are far more vulnerable, according to certain studies. Now, there is a myth that boys are less traumatized as victims of sexual abuse than girls. Absolutely. It's a culture which makes it seem like boys are invulnerable to child sexual abuse. And even if child sexual abuse happens, they're not traumatized. It's a double myth, right? We better be busting, because of these myths more boys are becoming victims in our society, because nobody seems to even talk to them about their experience. These are all myths. These are all myths. You know what is the other the myth that I have heard? It's very painful. Sometimes people thinking it's not abuse if it has happened only once. Are you all listening to me? What are sometimes the society thinking? It's not abuse if abuse has happened only once. Sometimes somebody might say, only once? No, it happened. Move on. Will you say the same thing to death, to accident? Only once it happened. Move on. It's no big deal. It's a myth. One time is scarring enough. The other myth that is abound in a society, in our society, is to think that if we don't talk about abuse, abuse will be forgotten. Are you all listening? If we don't talk about abuse, abuse will be forgotten. Absolutely no. For all you know, when we don't talk about abuse, it's far more traumatic because we suffer in silence. Yeah, we really need to be careful. Then I think Andrew is also speaking about another myth. Listen to this. I'm going to broaden the perspective, Andrew. I'm not only keeping it to males here. The idea of, listen to this, all those who are abusive today have been victims of yesterday. Are you listening? Everybody who is now abusing a child were abused as children. Maybe, may not be. But that does not mean, imagine somebody cannot come and say, I am abusing children now because I was abused as a child. Are who abused you? Did the child abuse you? Somebody else abused you. What sort of revenge? I mean, what sort of a mentality is that? That cannot be an excuse for your abuse. No. So therefore, yes, there are evidences showing that those who have been victims of abuse sometimes for various other psychological reasons end up abusing children. Possible, but that does not mean everybody who is abusive now have been abused in the past. Because with that logic, tell me, on one hand, we say male members don't get abused. Statistically, there are more male members who are being abusers. No, what is that logic? On one hand, we believe women don't abuse, because with this logic that if they are abused, then they will become abusers. We believe only girls get abused. That means there should only be women abusers, right? So it's a myth. It's a myth. Hmm? The other, the ideas, wonderful, some of you are saying, is get the victim married to the abuser. This is such a sad plight in our society, right? Get the rape victim married to the rapist. What do we have to say? I mean, it's like you perpetuate the crime even more. Okay. Now, the other myth could be child could have stopped it and said no. Of course, we can empower the child to say no. We can empower the child to say no, and that can have positive impact. But blaming the child, that you could have said no, no, you could have said no. We are in a society where a child says, don't feed me, I'm full. Mothers and parents won't stop. And you think abuser, because a child says no, he or she will stop? We can try. Of course, I believe as a trainer that when we can empower the child to say no, to protect himself or herself, yes, the possibility is high to prevent abuse. But that does not mean when the abuse has happened, we go back and blame the child saying, but you did not try enough to stop. We're talking about 5, 6, 7, 8, 12-year-old children. We really need to be careful in saying what we are saying. Yeah. Now, the myth: children invite sexual assault by acting seductively. Can you believe that? I've heard of a case. I've not dealt with this case. I've heard of a case where a 6 months old baby was raped. 6 months old baby. Are you telling the 6 months old baby acted seductively and the rapist took that as the reason, got invited? What a sick society. We better be standing up for the rights of children and their the well-being holistically, and not damage these children at a secondary level of trauma, no, by speaking all this. Yeah. Other, the child did not say no, try to stop the sex, so the child should be partly to blame. Very, very sad. Yeah. Oh my God. Okay, look at this point that Kirti is saying here. Having sexual contact with younger children increases fertility and cures terminal illness. This was shown in a movie called Lakshmi. Okay, I've not watched this movie Lakshmi, but I'm aware of this particular idea that engaging in sexual, you know, I mean, being abusive, that's the word. But from the abuser's perspective, engaging in sexual activity with a child is going to improve their, the fertility and other such, the myths. The last myth I'm going to take, and then let's move on to other topic. Aparna says, and if I've not taken your name, because there are so many messages, children will forget easily. My God. Can you believe that myth? Yeah, yes, children may forget maths, children may forget what they have studied, but when children are pained, when traumatic experience such as child sexual abuse, it's unlikely that a child forgets. Yes, children are resilient, far more resilient than most adults are. Yeah, but that does not mean that because they forget, they can be put through these experiences, right? And it's also not easy for a child to forget uh, something as scarring as that of child sexual abuse. And Kirti here says every professional must watch Lakshmi. We will, Kirti. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So these are all myths. These are all myths. And let me not forget to talk about this myth, and then I'll move on. The other myth that I've heard in a society which is homophobic, all of you are aware of this term, right? Homophobic, wherein the society at times is phobic towards, individuals with homosexual orientation. Yeah, it's a myth to believe that individuals who are having homosexual orientation are likely to be child sexual offenders. There is no statistical evidence for this. In fact, you could say, I mean, it also because, they are sexual minorities, but there are more number of abusers who've been heterosexual in their sexual orientation than homosexual. That does not mean individuals with homosexual orientation, there are no cases of they being sexual offenders. They can be, but to make a categorical statement that all of them are child sexual abusers, or to say that mostly they are, this is a myth. There is no statistical evidence for it. Are you all okay with this? Yeah, I hope there is clarity regarding myths about child sexual abuse, because unless we do not bust these myths, whatever you say, imagine here are 50 parents who have boys children, boy child. If this myth that boys too can be victims, if this idea is not driven, then the rest of the workshop will make no sense to them. They'll not take it seriously. So what I would suggest is, whenever you are engaging in any community outreach programs, or you're empowering even one-on-one, kindly ensure that you begin by busting the myths. You please begin by busting the myths. I'm sure there are a whole lot of other myths, but I hope I've given you a glimpse of an idea for you to take these lessons forward. All right. Now, I'm coming to the last part of the session. This is I mean, even though it's a copyrighted content, what I'll be sharing with you, I want all of you to take it forward, speak to, get our help, and share your experiences with us. I have left the email ID and the contact details, but please use it. That's my request. That's my humble request to all of you. What is this? Each letter will act as a clue to a child. Each idea in the safety guide will act like a clue. The moment a child experiences any of the 11 clues that I'm talking, the child must inform 3 trusted people, not 1, 3. Why am I saying 3? Telling 3 because sometimes a child will tell one person, this person won't act. Now, when we are telling, please tell at least to 3 people. At least somebody will help the child, no? So 3 is a good number. But I really hope a child has 3 trusted people. I remember, I think in 2019, when we were in Goa, we did a program at Dempe College, and twice I've conducted program at Dempe College. In one such, program, I had a lady, maybe she was a foreign national. Looks like she was running an organization here. After, when I say, when a child experiences abuse, any of these 11 clues, they need to inform 3 trusted adults. She actually made a point after the program. She came to me and said, but I wonder if children have 3 trusted adults in their life. Isn't it sad that a child does not have any 3 trusted adults? It's sad, but that's the unfortunate reality of most children sometimes in our country. So therefore, we need to encourage children to figure out who can you trust at least a little bit. Yes, that person may scold you. Yes, that person you're afraid. But do you think when you're in problem, they will help you? Then consider that person as a trusted person. So first, empower them to have 3 trusted people. Okay. Now let's start. S stands for secret caution. Caution means the child must be cautious about it. When the child becomes aware, the child must inform. S stands for secret caution. What does secret caution mean? I want you to know, most of the abusers who do grooming, now by now grooming. Do you all know grooming? Grooming is the process by which an abuser prepares the child for potential abuse and then maintains secrecy. Most abusers will begin with secrecy, secrets. They may say, hey, you know what? I'll play a game with you, secret game. You should not tell to anyone. It's not abuse yet. But why should a responsible adult maintain secrets with a child? Why should a responsible adult encourage the child to maintain secrets? An abuser, potential abuser, may tell a child, I'll give you a gift, but you should keep quiet about it. Will you come and meet me? Keep quiet about it. I'll come and meet you, but don't tell your parents. Now, what we are telling children is, if there is any adult who's encouraging you to maintain secrets, should you maintain secrets? No, a child should not maintain secrets. Instead, must inform 3 trusted adults. All right? S is secret caution. A is abusive touch caution. What is abusive touch? Children Touch is easy. Abusive, I understand, is difficult. But the reason why I believe in front of touch there must be abusive is because then we don't want children growing up afraid of all touch. The moment you say good touch, bad touch, children are like, ah, you touched me, you must be an abuser. We are creating a world where touch, which is one of the most basic forms of human interaction, now we are afraid of that. Now, how do I explain abusive? The way I explain abusive to children is use abuse. I ask children, do you know use? They'll say, we know what use means. Then I'll ask them, tell me, what is the use of a pen? Then children will tell, no, to write, to draw. They'll tell something like that. Yeah. And then I'll ask them, the use of the pen is to write, to draw. Fine, good. Now, if the same pen I take and put it in the eyes, put it on your head, what will happen? I'm harming, ma'am. You're harming, you're hurting. They'll tell all that. Then you tell, when you hurt someone, when you harm someone, that is what is known as abuse. You tell them that. So that now they know abuse is not okay. Abuse is wrong. Now you ask them, can you think of some type of touch that might be harmful? Now they have an idea. Are you all listening to me? So therefore, it's also one thing to know the model, but another thing to actually use it with children. But children understand. I have seen UKG children understand, first standard children understand, use abuse. Then you talk about the four private parts. Which are the four private parts? Lips, chest portion, the genitalia. You use the words as per their age, and then the bum. And some children will ask, but if they touch my tummy, is that okay? If you feel uncomfortable, then that is abusive touch. You inform three trusted adults. So you talk like this about abusive touch. Let me move on. It's already 3:50. The next one is fear caution. What does fear caution mean? Fear caution is when a child is, you know, uh, made to get scared. A teacher might say, if I'll touch you, but if you do not allow me, then I'm going to fail you. Such examples have happened. So we are telling children, if somebody is unnecessarily creating fear in you and then is sexually abusing you, or sexually abuses you and then creates fear in you, please inform three trusted adults. All right. Then I'm going faster. Electronic device caution. What is electronic device caution? Child must be told if somebody shows you certain nude pictures, people without clothes, on their cell phone, on the TV, laptop, any gadget, be careful and speak to three trusted adults. Or if they are using electronic device to record you when you're bathing, or when they're asking you to behave in a particular manner and they're recording, that too needs to be informed. E. T stands for trap caution. Trap, two types: physical trap, emotional trap. Physical trap is pulling the child, locking the child up in a room. The child must be aware that that could lead to potential abuse. Yeah. Emotional trap is, hey, that day I gave you mobile phone. I'm good, right? That day I gave you money. Today, if I'm asking you a favor, that favor is I'm going to abuse you. You need to keep quiet. Won't you do it? Emotional trap. Let the children be aware of it. All right. Now look at why. I know this is slightly difficult for children to understand, but if you insist and explain to them in a manner that they can understand. U stands for your intuition. What is intuition? Children will say, they'll think tuition and all that, now bust, and then tell your intuition is that gut feeling, that sixth sense. They know all that. Yeah, explain to them. So your intuition means sometimes the person has not abused, but I'm somehow uncomfortable. You know, with that discomfort, I can't go lodge a POXO case. Why should we? I could be wrong. But isn't it the child's right and an adult's duty to listen to the child's discomfort and then intuition. The child is like, Mama, I don't like the way that uncle looks at me. Now we need to protect the child and avoid the child meeting that person as much as possible, right? And I can tell you, second standard children, when I ask them, give me examples of intuition that you've experienced. I had this kid, I think in Haryana or somewhere. My Hindi is bad. The child told this in Hindi. The child is telling something like, Ma'am, ek din, the essence is I was at school. I came home. I hadn't seen my mother. मैंने मम्मी को देखा नहीं था or something like that. My Hindi is bad. But then I can sense that she is in a gussa mood. And then I knew she will scold me simply because she is in a bad mood. And it happened like that. Is that intuition? Isn't it? That's intuition. Children are far more intuitive than most adults are because they're closer to nature. Yeah. So, Nandini ma'am, I am showing you the slide on safety guide. Are you not able to see? I've actually displayed the screen. Okay. I think she's asking whether I can put the slide. I've already done that, ma'am. Have a look. So your intuition is another clue. All right, this is safety. What is guide? G stands for gift caution. We need to tell children, if somebody gives you gift unnecessarily, inappropriately, I know of a case. She's a psychologist. All right. Now, when she was a kid, the neighbor, it hurts. The neighbor comes and then gives this particular kid, 12 years maybe, innerwear as a gift for her birthday and tells you open it when you're all alone. Isn't this an inappropriate gift for a child? And a child forgets and then opens it in front of the parents, and the parents are angry and they go check with the neighbor, what sort of a gift is this? And the person says, oh, wrong package. And then the child apparently, the child said, but you asked me to open it secretly. So you see, let us tell children that inappropriate gifts that are expensive, and gifts that are given and asked to be maintained as a secret, the child must be careful. All right. Then U stands for undress. Yeah, asking a child to undress or undressing in front of the kid, let it be a clue that the child must inform 3 trusted adults. I stands for isolate, physical isolation. Can you come and meet me somewhere? Can you tell me when your parents are not there? They are trying to separate and then take advantage. The child must be aware of it. D stands for dirty talk. No. Or nobody need not say, I'll do this, do that. Calling and then talking in a sexually exploitative manner. D stands for dirty talk. E stands for eyes. What is eyes? That which involves eyes caution, making a child watch porn, or looking at a child, seeing a child when the child is bathing, or telling a child, look at me, I'm masturbating. All of this is eyes caution. And my belief is, and our experience is, that children will remember safety guide. These are heuristics, right? These are acronyms. They'll remember better, and chances of they remembering will increase the chances of their reporting. I hope all of you will take this to, the children wherever you are. Yeah, I hope you do that. Now, I'm going to wind it up by talking about child helpline. You know that 1098 is the child helpline. Always tell children, call 1098. I'll tell you why. In one of the programs that I was conducting, usually I would say 1098 because it's decreasing order, not 1098. Till one child, I forget which place, this kid must be 8, 9. Innocence of children. And I made everybody say, what is the child helpline? They all said 10, 9, 8. And I'm like, good. And then I asked, do you have any questions? One kid, Mom, I have a question. And I'm like, the child is almost about to cry. And usually I ensure that when I'm conducting program with children, I keep it fun. I keep it energetic so they feel empowered and not scared about child sexual abuse. That's another thing for all of you. Whenever you're conducting a program on child sexual abuse, make it empowering. Ask them, with this, you need to feel confident, not scared. That's usually the tone. But this kid who seemed okay throughout the program is like, I have a question. And I'm like, God, what went wrong? Why is the child crying? And then I asked the kid, what's the question? The child says, 1098. And I'm like, yes, 1098 is the child helpline number. And the kid is, sure, 1098. I'm like, yes, it's 1098. The kid tells me, my father's cell phone does not have the number 10. True, no, nobody's cell phone has 10. Instead, we need to type 1098. The kid is telling everybody is saying 10 is okay, but my father's cell phone does not have 10. So you see, that is the innocence of a child. What we think is all right is not all right for a child. So break it up. Tell it's 1098. So no child, at least this child told me about this worry that 10 is not there. How can I call? You see, such is the innocence of a child. So always tell children 1098 is a child helpline. In the past, I think in 2017, when Dempe College had organized a 2 day child sexual abuse workshop, had facilitated it, there were employees from the Goa Panji child helpline who were there. Yeah, it's one of the most reliable helplines. I've never had a situation when we've called and we've not received help. So may you be aware of it, and you also let children be aware of it. Let me end now. Thank you so much for such a patient listening, and the participation was excellent. If there are any questions, I could take it. But if the only question is, ma'am, you took so much time, it's already 4 o'clock, then, I'll leave. If you have any questions, you can even mail me to this email ID. All right. If there are questions, I would love to take. Thanks, everyone. Thank you so much, and all the very best to all of you. And let us all make child safety our topmost priority. Yeah. Thank you so much. And
Yes.
thanks, Dempe College, for this opportunity. Thank you.
Participants, if you all have any questions, I would like to request you all to please post them in the chat box. If you have any questions, please post them in the chat box. Anyone has any questions? We'll just check YouTube as well. Okay, I think there are no questions. Okay. Before I propose the vote of thanks, like we did in the first session, can I request all the participants to please put on your camera so that we can have a picture of you all? Yes.
Nice to finally see you all. At least some of you.
Yes. Taking screenshot. Pratisha? Yes. Screenshot. Okay, 1 minute. Yes. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Okay, there is a question.
Guys, what I usually conduct is a 40-hour session. What we have done today is just the tip of the iceberg. Just not even tip. If there's a superlative degree, the tippiest of the tip is what I have covered today. So there's so much to know. Keep your interest going. Than that, take it to the community. Yeah, that's needed.
Ma'am, Ma'am Ashwini, there's a question for you. There's someone who's asked if you conduct a workshop for parents.
Absolutely, ma'am. Everyone. More so for parents, because children, sometimes it's easier to empower them than parents,
Any
because
more?
parents come with a lot of predetermined ideas, but with efforts we can. So therefore, definitely we conduct workshops to all groups. Yeah, to all groups. Get in touch. We certainly can do the needful.
Thank you, Ashmi. On behalf of the management, staff, and students of BCP's Dempe College of Arts and Science, and all the participants present in this webinar, I would like to express my immense gratitude to Ms. Ashwini Envy for taking time out of a busy schedule to share her thought provoking insights on the topic recognizing, responding, and preventing child sexual abuse to create a safe society. Child sexual abuse can have wide ranging and devastating consequences for victims. For some victims and survivors, these effects endure throughout adult life. Ms. Ashwini explained in such detail and with very relevant real life examples topics like levels of prevention of child sexual abuse, the potential warning signs of child sexual abuse, types of child sexual abuse, grooming, myths about sexual abuse, and the safety guide model. The examples and experiences shared made the session very interesting and helped us sustain our attention throughout the session. We can just go on listening to you, ma'am. It was so amazing how Ms. Ashwini made the session so interactive. Thank you once again, Ms. Ashwini, for being there with us today and for making the session so enlightening and enriching. I'm sure that our participants have gained helpful insights with regards to how we can recognize, respond, and prevent child sexual abuse, and how we, as stakeholders involved in the overall development of children and adolescents, could work together to prevent child sexual abuse. I also take this opportunity to express my deep sense of appreciation to all participants who joined us today and participated in the session with great enthusiasm. Before we wrap up, I would like to remind you all that the feedback link for this session has been posted on the chat boxes in Google Meet and YouTube too. Kindly fill up the same. We will see you all at 10 a.m. tomorrow, sharp for the day two of the webinar. Kindly join 10 minutes before the session. Once again, I thank you all for being with us today, and I wish you all a wonderful day ahead. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.